Good afternoon, John. How the heck are you?
I'm doing well. I left practice, and I'm going to go get a hamburger from The Habit, so life is great.
Yes, life is good. I think I enjoyed 3 Habit burgers while I was out there myself. One of the preferred destinations, I believe, of DFW Media.
I don't want to take any shots and compare it to Whataburger, but it's on Whataburger's heels.
Woo-hoo-hoo! That's a strong statement there. And I think a bucket list for any Cowboys fan heading to California is that Habit burger. So we had injury scares here today with Biadasz and Mazi Smith. Are we doing okay with these guys?
Yeah, the Cowboys sound pretty optimistic on both. It sounds like it's more like knee tendonitis with Mazi, but obviously enough that he has to get an MRI. With Biadasz, it's an ankle. They don't seem very concerned. Injury, even if it is something small, and the offensive line right now has to be a concern without Zach Martin. And I mean, the depth just isn't great on that offensive line. And not that Biadasz was really going to play on Saturday anyway, but that's not something you want to see. There's been a few times where he's gotten up slow in practice, and so I wonder if this is kind of a combination of some stuff earlier in the season. But yeah, not having Zach Martin here, and then all of a sudden Biadasz goes down, that's not exactly what they wanted to see today.
You know, I wonder, John, your thoughts overall on what we've seen from the offensive line. It seems like McCarthy's trying to hype that group up really vividly. I mean, he's talking about, I love the install work we're getting, but I don't know that we saw a lot of great work, especially the depth is a big question there.
I agree with you. I don't think that I've seen anything that's really like jumped out to me to where I'm like, oh, no, they got a guy right now. Ball will fit, can fit in, or Farniak or Hoffman or let's go. Like, I need to see a lot from them on Saturday. And I feel like the coaching staff has to feel the same way, but I don't know if Mike McCarthy saying publicly, like, yeah, we got a ton of holes on the offensive line would be the right thing to do either. I don't think he would want to put that out there. And they still have some time, but, like I said before, this is one of those things where I look back to last year. They needed help. At kicker, they went and got Maher. They needed help on the interior defensive line, got Hankins. They needed help at linebacker, got Anthony Barr. Needed help at wide receiver, got T.Y. Hilton. I don't think that you can write off the possibility of them trying to make a move for a veteran interior offensive lineman if needed. Whether they get a deal done and Zach is back here or not, I just think that there's just too much riding on this season to have the question marks they do on this offensive line, depth right now.
Okay, you brought up Zach Martin. I want to follow up with that. As we get closer now to the first preseason game, all the money he's already had to forfeit, upwards of $600,000. I mean, what's your confidence that Zach Martin's going to show up for week 1 right now?
It's not super high, but I would say that if I was predicting right now, I still expect him to be back for the season opener, but I am a little surprised that something hasn't gotten worked out up to this point. It's just an interesting situation because, we hear plenty of stuff from Jerry, but you don't really hear anything from Martin and his camp. And so obviously Jerry makes it clear he's very dug in, there's some comparisons to the DeMarcus Ware situation where they let DeMarcus Ware go and he still had plenty of gas left in the tank. He went on one Super Bowl with Denver. And I go back to that and I think, yeah, that was a bold move. And that 2014 season after they let him go is one of the best the Cowboys have had in the last decade. But with DeMarcus Ware, that team might have went to the Super Bowl in 2014. And I look at this Cowboys team the same way. It's so loaded that, maybe they make the playoffs if they don't have Zach Martin this year. But if you're going to try and make a run at the Super Bowl, I don't know how you do that without Zach Martin. And so, I also think back to 2019 because as much as Jerry said about Zach so far, he's said that and more about Zeke at the time when Zeke was holding out. Go back to that preseason game after it in Hawaii when he said Zeke who, and then he gets a deal done with Zeke and he has a Zeke who shirt and everything was fine after that. So he's dug in right now, but that doesn't mean that in a half hour he couldn't get something done.
Do you think if a team called looking to make a trade, they'd be willing to do it? Cowboys?
I don't. I really don't. And I just think because he's still playing at the top of his game. He's still one of the best guards in the league. And it's not like you drafted some young offensive lineman that you're like, okay, well, then that player can fit into his role, and it sucks, and we're losing a Hall of Fame guy and a Ring of Honor guy, but we got this young guy coming up. They're just so thin on the defensive line. I don't see any way that they could do a move like that.
John, we have the NFL Network on in our studio as we're doing our show, so we're getting little practice clips. And once again, you're doing a great job of providing clips. bad day for the offense, good day for the defense, or were we missing something from this today?
No, and I feel like that was the case, or has been the case for most of these practices out here. There's no question. I will say one of my favorite things from this camp so far has been just watching the differences between Trayvon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore, because they're both very good at what they do, but they're just so different. Like where Gilmore almost gives up nothing, but he doesn't have the interceptions, whereas Diggs will give up some plays, but then like today, he has 2 picks that are just there. He's tracking balls like he's the wide receiver, and almost had a third in the back of the end zone. And you just watch that, and you're just like, man, the game-changing plays that this guy can make. And then even Vander Esch got an interception in the red zone. No, the defense is just on another level. And I know having the offensive line being shaky, not having Biadasz out there hasn't helped things. But, yeah, I would say most of the days we've been out here, the defense has had the leg up on the offense. And so because of that, it's kind of interesting that the possibility of Dak not playing in the preseason, and then you go into, week one, with a quarterback and an adjusted offense, and he doesn't really have any snaps. It could be interesting to see what that offense looks like, the first few weeks of the season.
Do you feel like, John, is the quarterback taking chances, or the defensive backs just doing a good job of playing in coverage?
That's a good question. I do think that he's taken some chances. I think he's thrown some balls to some guys that maybe he wouldn't be, during the season, because he's trying to build a rapport a little bit, I'd say. But also just the fact of we're talking a couple of series in between. He gets picked by Trayvon and goes right back, after him. Where I don't know, maybe he wouldn't do that in an actual game, but because it's training camp, why not try it out? And obviously, Trayvon Diggs' confidence is sky high coming out of this practice as well. But I don't necessarily see him doing that in the regular season. I think there is a little bit of trial and working on some things right here, and I don't think he's bothered by the fact of some websites putting together these videos and just talking about how many interceptions he's thrown. I don't think that is really a major concern for him. And, when he's been going after Cooks and Lamb and Michael Gallup, he's been pretty good. It's some of the targeting some of the other guys, but yeah, I get it. It makes a lot of traction on social media, especially for fans that don't like the Cowboys.
It's Jon Machota here with you in the GBag Nation. You can read his stuff on The Athletic. A must follow on Cowboys Twitter, by the way. Has some great videos every practice. Even if the picks remain high at this rate, it's not a deal breaker for winning, right? It's still within range. It's just a little higher than you'd prefer.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to the fact of I can see Mike McCarthy calling a little bit more conservative of a game plan just because of how loaded this defense is. And I go back to, you look at the numbers he had the first couple of years he was the head coach in Green Bay. The interception numbers came down quite a bit from Brett Favre from the year before he took over. And I don't think that interceptions are going to be a major issue for Dak. With this receiving core, with the rapport that he's built so quickly with Brandon Cooks, as long as that they can have somewhat of a healthy offensive line up front, I think the offense takes care of itself. But also on the other hand, this isn't the 2014, 2016 Cowboys where, well, they're going to go as far as the offense can carry them. No, this defense is for real. This is definitely a top 5 defense and has a chance to be the NFL's best defense. They don't need the offense to put up huge numbers to win games, but they definitely can't have Dak turning the ball over multiple times per game either.
John, can you give us just a moment, please?
Rules are rules. Mama, give me them flapjacks, and Mama, take away 5 of them flapjacks. I want to stay hungry for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah. All right, John, you just said Brett's name, so that's
Brett
something
Favre,
we got to
phrase
do
that
on the
pays.
show. I do want to follow up with
I'm telling you, hey, that clip right there when he says that. That is one of the funniest things. I think he says it about Tracy Rocker or whatever when he's talking about.
Yep.
Oh my God, that is so good.
Talking about the road. Oh, it's amazing. It's so good. I love it. His Keith Jackson impression is epic, and I'm glad that you know that reference. But when it comes to the offensive changes, I know you've written about this on The Athletic. What stood out to you, and are you buying the run first type of hype and talk that we've heard from McCarthy? Because I'll tell you, with how this team's constructed, I don't think that they're going to be super run first.
Yeah, I'd say as I sit here today, I don't either. And that's one of those things where, yeah, they're obviously going to be committed to the run, at different points in the game and things like that. But if you're not having success running the ball, you're not just going to keep running into the wall and going, well, another 3 and out. Let's just go punt it again. Maybe in certain games if the flow of the game is going in that direction, but I just don't see that happening. If the offensive line's playing well, by all means, yeah, I can see them running it in that. But No, I don't. I can't see this being, like I said, that 2014, 2016, obviously they were run heavy with DeMarco and Zeke. I'm not so sure I believe that is going to be the case here. But when you do talk about things I've noticed on the offense, I will say that now in the third week of this training camp, there's been some separation between Jalen Tolbert and the rest of those other receivers. The top three, that's clear, obvious. Everyone knows who the starters are. But I came into camp kind of wondering, okay, how's it going to be 4, 5, 6 after that? And I didn't really know for sure. And to me right now, Tolbert is clearly number 4, and then 5 and 6 are between Kevontae Turpin and Jalen Brooks. And I would think if they cut the roster down to 53 today, I think that those would be your 6 wide receivers, the starting 3, and then the 3 I just mentioned.
Do you think they're going to carry 6 wide receivers, John?
I think it's possible just because of the fact of, Turpin and what he does on,
sure.
Special teams. But I just think that they're going to have to go thin in another position because I think they're going to want to have that. Now, of course, they can do the different types of, roster gymnastics that they've done in the past when they cut it down to 53 to try and make it. But of the guys I just mentioned, I don't think they want to make any of them available. At least, again, and I say if they're cutting to 53 today. And I say that because Jalen Brooks is just trending upwards. We get into Saturday and then the next preseason game and he doesn't look that way. Hey, well, then you change the way but I'm saying if they're cutting it today, I can't see them allowing Jalen Brooks to be out there for another team to grab.
Are you surprised, John, that they cut Vizcaino?
No, I'm surprised that they didn't do like they did last year where that morning that they brought in Maher and a few other kickers, when they let Garibay go, it was like, oh, well, we're also going to bring in some other competition. The fact that there was no competition that morning when they let Vizcaino go, that surprised me. But the way I understand it, I think they want to give him every chance, Aubrey, on Saturday, see what he can do there. And to be honest with you, the best day that we've seen from the kickers by far was today. I mean, Aubrey didn't miss. So maybe him not having another kicker there, maybe that's good for him. But ultimately, this will be decided on what he does in those preseason games. And they would love for him to win the job, but I still have my questions about whether or not he will.
Anything else about these Cowboys before we let you go, John? What are you working on?
I think I'm going to be writing about DeMarvion Overshown. He's been catching my eye lately. He had a really good practice, at least at the end on Saturday, where he had an interception and then the play got called back and an offside. Then he had another interception a few plays later to end practice. And he's just been trending in the right direction. And, John Fossil loves what he's going to bring on special teams. But then also, I think he's got a chance to – I'm not saying he's going to be like getting snaps over Leighton or Damone Clark, but just his versatility. I just got this feeling with Dan Quinn. He's going to find some packages for him, even if everyone's healthy, to try and get him on the field, maybe more against certain opponents than others. I just think he's been trending up lately. He's certainly high on my list of players I want to watch on Saturday.
Do you think he's possibly the Jayron Curse replacement, as they've gotten all these other safeties locked up, but Curse isn't done yet?
It's possible, but my thing with Curse is that, like, if Leighton Vander Esch was to go down, like, Curse is the next guy up. He's got the dot on his helmet. He's the one that's going to be calling that defense. And I don't know, Jayron Curse to me just brings so much more than just what he does on the field, like his leadership, everything there. I know that they haven't gotten a deal done with him yet, but I still think that there's a good chance that he's back with the Cowboys next year. It might only be on a one-year deal. Maybe that deal doesn't get done until March, but I'm not writing him off with the Cowboys, even though he hasn't got anything done yet. Like, I just think that he's too valuable to what this team does. So, hey, maybe other guys step up during the season, and that proves me wrong. Maybe DeMarvion Overshown is a guy that steps up, and you're like, oh, well, some of these other guys deserve bigger roles. But as it sits here right now, I expect Jayron Curse to be a Cowboy next season.
You're the man, John. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me on, guys.